about Fox News, on November 30th,
they should be embarrassed, John. Fox News
right.
should be embarrassed. I give a little credit to Tucker Carlson because Tucker covered it the other day, but I mean, nobody's talking about it. Even some of these other big quote unquote conservative outlets, Newsmax is another one, but Fox News particularly because they called Arizona early. They had no reason to do that, and they should not have done that. And none of them are talking about the hearing the other day, even though the level of fraud is just outrageous.
I mean, everyone pay attention. That's why people, all of you listening, we want to encourage and inspire you. Don't be concerned about crossing that line. The reason why we're banned on YouTube, banned on LinkedIn, and General Flynn, as you said, it's a badge of honor. Speaking the truth, when Fox called Arizona, and then when I saw on Hannity, they had the governor meeting, and he had Ducey from Arizona next to him. I'm like, Maricopa County, you certified a criminal to be in the House right now. So this is why all of you listening, this is why we do what we do, and we have to fight like a Flynn, and you fight with faith, and you fight with truth, and God's looking for those warriors that you saw.
And the truth will come out, and the truth is coming out, and that's the one thing about, when we talk about, dark and light, good and evil, good will overcome. But I will tell you the one thing that I know, and I personally know this, John, as the world saw, the truth will eventually come out, and when it does, it's never pretty. If the bad news doesn't get better with time. Bad news, if you got bad news, you better push it out there right away, and you better beg for forgiveness if you cause that bad news to occur. And the American people will forgive. They won't necessarily allow you to get away without having some type of consequence, but they'll be a lot friendlier of that consequence if you come up front and you say, hey, look, we made a mistake. But right now, the Maricopa County Board of Election Supervisors is still trying to hide behind this thing. And Fox News isn't talking about it, other than maybe Tucker. And I didn't see a segment on Friday because I was up in Sacramento at another rally. But I understand that he at least talked about it. But he's it. The rest of them won't even mention it because they're embarrassed, and they should be. But they actually owe the American people an apology, and that's something that I just can't get over that because, hey, well, either you stand for the truth and you admit your mistakes, or you don't, and you're going to go the way of CNN and some of these other cable news networks that are losing audiences left and right because they're not telling the truth.
That's right.
Anyway, on election integrity, that is a huge issue. It is one of the top issues right now of the American psyche, of the American political life of our country, because it's the one place where we are all equal when we go inside that voting booth. It doesn't make any difference if you're somebody of little means or a lot of means. We're all equal, and our vote is supposed to count as one for one person, one vote. So I just think that we violated that. We violated that trust, and there's people in our system that have done that to us, and we just can't allow that. We cannot allow that. And so, best thing to do for everybody that's listening to CBJ here today, if you're part of the problem, you better get it fixed quickly because the American people are coming for the truth, and we will discover it. So the next kind of couple of things, John, because I know we get into time, is I really would like to talk about three things, and they're really overseas things. Number one, I'd like to talk about our pullout of Afghanistan and what's happening, what I think is going to happen in Afghanistan. I'm really, people always ask me, was it worth it? Military people don't, it's hard to answer that question, was it worth it? Because when we serve at the pleasure and, of our political masters who decide whether or not what we're going to do, how we're going to act in a particular policy directive when we are sent off to war. So what I would do is I would just say that it was worth my time serving in the military with the teams and the people that I served with. And I loved the military. I love serving in the military. I go back in the military and continue to serve today if this country needed me. But I will tell you that 20 years of war in Afghanistan, and we're pulling out of there now. This administration is pulling out lock, stock, and barrel with a couple of hundred people left at the embassy. And I really am concerned about those people that are left behind there. We won't, quote unquote, leave them behind in any way, but there's gonna be some hazards for those people. The other thing is that I can't sit here or stand here today, visiting my family up in the state of Rhode Island and tell them that, oh yeah, this was a great victory for the United States of America in terms of warfare. What we have really done in our military and in our political environment is we have gotten really good. We're a T, we're trained, we're an A+ at participating in war, but we're not very good at winning the war. And that's probably been that way for decades now, really going back to the Korean War. And I actually have written about that, John, and it's really important because when we send the men and women, the most precious resources we have is our young adults off to war to potentially give the last true measure of devotion and for some country that in some dark place that the soldiers would rather not be, for people who they really don't understand, or the people that are there don't really care for us to be there in many cases, and for objectives that we totally can't comprehend or are not really clear, and we end up leaving in a sort of a funny way where you don't have that big W, right? You kind of just say, well, yeah, I participated, I got my badge, and now I'm back doing something else. What I don't ever want to have happen is I don't want to have the trust of the American people broken between America and those that wear the cloth of the country in our armed forces, in the military, in our National Guard, in our reserve, and especially in our active components. So really important, and I'm concerned that that's the case. The second sort of adversary or element, this has to back to communism, which is an internal problem in our country right now, is the situation in Cuba, and particularly for your audience, because I think you have a big audience down there in Florida. But
yes,
the Cuban American community needs to know that are American citizens today. They need to know that America has not only their back, but the freedom-loving people and the freedom-fighting people in Cuba. This is not about them not wanting to, which the dummy from the State Department that I think it has holds down the Western Hemisphere see. I mean, honest to God, I mean, I think you saw that. Certainly they paid attention. The Cuban Americans paid attention to it. I saw that, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. These people can't be that stupid. I mean, these people in Cuba are being killed and gunned down, and the media, many of the media, are not going to show those kinds of things. They're not going to try to get the stories out to the rest of America, because this administration's policy is really appeasement towards the government in Cuba, and it goes back to the Obama administration. They actually want to see this dictator down there continue to stay in power, and instead of helping these people who are trying to fight for their lives. So for the people of Cuba that listen to this show, that maybe this will be broadcast into Havana or other parts of Cuba, and for the Cuban Americans down in Florida, the American people have your back, and you continue to fight for your freedom. And that's something that's a cherished part of who we are in our country,